Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. This week, we're talking about Dunkin's protein drinks. So you may remember last year, so that was 2025, Starbucks came out with their protein drinks. And I went into Starbucks, one of the locations by me in New York City, and I asked a ton of questions. Admittedly, I caused a little bit of a scene. And, that whole story you can find in our bonus episode from December 12th, 2025, Nutrition Nugget Starbucks protein drinks. So anyway, fast forward, Dunkin announced their protein drinks earlier this year in 2026. And naturally, many of you asked me about them. So I went to Dunkin and I did the same thing. Now, I did start on their website to see if I could get some information before I went into the store. I also found their press release around it. And so I looked at all that before I went into the store because, of course, I had lots of questions. So anyway, here's the scoop. The press release highlights that they're using protein milk. They highlight their partnership with Megan Thee Stallion for the campaign. And the press release focused on protein refreshers and protein lattes. They also mention in there a milk or non-dairy base. And so I'm going to come back to that in a second. Now, on their website, in the PDF of their nutrition facts, they do in fact have the protein drinks there. And there are quite a few of them. So in my opinion, this is better than what Starbucks offered because for their nutrition facts related to the protein drinks, you really couldn't get that information. In their advertising, Dunkin says a medium beverage has 15 grams of protein. Well, in the PDF, I see that that's not entirely the case. The medium of some drinks had 10 grams, the large of some showed 13 grams. So whatever drink you prefer, please be sure that you're looking at those nutrition facts. And by the way, make sure that you're looking at all of the nutrition facts, not just that protein content. So then I went to the store. And I really should say stores because I had to go to more than one in order to get my questions answered. Now, just like I did with Starbucks, I went into the store and I said, I have some questions about your protein drinks. Can I see the protein powder you're using? And, Starbucks, they were creating their own protein milk with protein powder and milk. And of course, everything is their own brand. So I could only get information from them. And even then, it was sort of a bit of a guesstimate. Dunkin, though, is using Lactaid brand protein milk. So I'll go to those nutrition facts in a second. It was interesting. I mean, in the store, they were kind. They let me take pictures of the Lactaid milk carton. And then, of course, I had more questions. So first, I wanted to confirm that that was the only protein source. So if someone orders a protein drink, it has to be made with that. Which means then, going back to their press release, the idea of the milk or non-dairy base isn't quite the reality of what I saw. Now, it's possible that the New York City stores are just not participating in parts of this rollout. I don't really know, but the only option in the stores, the Dunkin locations that I went to, was the Lactaid protein milk. The other curious thing is that on the menu in the store, like on the board that lights up, they highlight this almond protein matcha latte. So I now asked about that one. And I said, so that's not almond milk? And they said no. And the woman held up the almond syrup. She said, it's sugar-free almond though. And then she showed me a vanilla syrup, which they use in other options. So the bottom line is, if you order a protein drink from Dunkin, you are getting Lactaid's protein milk, and then anything else in there is syrups. So we also have a nutrition nugget on coffee syrups that you can go back to on that one. And then I felt like we needed to look at the Lactaid brand milk, right? So Lactaid as a brand is lactose-free dairy milk. It's not a plant-based, milk in air quotes. So what Lactaid says is they start with milk from cows, which they note are free of artificial growth hormone treatment. So I like that. And yet we also don't know that that means it's completely hormone free, because that's not what they're saying. They're saying it's artificial growth hormone free. Okay, anyway, then they add lactase enzymes, which break down the lactose. Lactose is the naturally occurring sugar in milk that many are allergic or sensitive to, and that's where they get to their lactose-free milk. Now, they also highlight that its lactose-free 2% protein milk is fortified with ultra-filtered skim milk, which is higher in protein than regular milk. So this reminds me of when we talked about Fairlife, right? What they do to their milk when we looked at the Fairlife protein drinks. So that was a listener request, by the way. You can go back to that nutrition nugget too. So anyway, ingredients of the Lactaid 2% protein milk are reduced fat milk, ultra-filtered skim milk, lactase enzyme, vitamin A palmitate, and vitamin D3. In the nutrition facts, we see serving size is 1 cup. We get 150 calories, 5 grams of total fat, of which it's 3 grams of saturated fat, 0 grams of trans fat, 12 grams of total carbs, of which we have 0 grams of fiber, 11 grams of total sugar, 0 of which is added sugar, and then 13 grams of protein. And the micronutrients, the amounts are pretty low. Like, even though they've added vitamin A and vitamin D3, the amounts are still pretty low. And I will say, I appreciate that there are not any sweeteners or emulsifiers in those ingredients. You know, I think for me personally, I don't love the taste of regular milk, and Lactaid tastes like regular milk, so I probably wouldn't drink this. And maybe that's the best barometer for us to use, right? Would you normally choose Lactaid? I suppose if you wanted a lactose-free option, I would say go for the Dunkin protein drink over the Starbucks. You know, I think as always, we need to carefully choose the other add-ins like flavorings and syrups and sweeteners and other things that they're putting into these drinks. And like I said before, you can certainly check Dunkin's website, their Nutrition Facts PDF, to see if your favorite drink is there. But on the whole, if it makes you happy, great. Go for the Dunkin protein drink. I think it's important that it just doesn't become the justification for ordering something that maybe we otherwise wouldn't. And I want to remind you, you do not have to order coffee with protein. I've said it before and I'll say it again. It is okay for us to not protein pack every single thing that we consume. I get why Dunkin wants to jump on that bandwagon, and just because they are doesn't necessarily mean you have to. But that's the scoop on Dunkin's protein drinks. Well, as always, I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or all social media. I am at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. Website is asaladwithasideoffries.com. Pick your platform, send a message. I love hearing from you, your ideas, your questions, your takeaways. This is also the easiest way to learn more about working with me as your health coach. Cecily, thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Jenn. What a joy. I love your work. Thank you for continuing to do what you do. This is such an important perspective and place, and I'm grateful to have been a part of it.
Well, likewise, I appreciate you. And friends, if you are not already a member, join us in the Happy Healthy Hub. You'll go to asaladwithasideoffries.com/membership. This shows your support for this podcast, this community, and your health, on top of this week's episode in full video with behind-the-scenes pieces and your 24/7 Ask Me Anything in the community board. You'll get this week's recipe for the hot pink coconut slaw. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.